Welcome to the special episode of the EUVC podcast, where we're looking behind the curtains of a European unicorn, Blueground. Blueground was minted the European unicorn in March this year, 2024. And today we're having Apostolos from VentureFriends, one of the early backers, if not the first backer of Blueground, with us to share the story behind that company.
Here's a few words from our beloved sponsor. Discover where operational expertise meets innovation. With end-to-end coverage across fund admin, tax, accounting, compliance, ESG, and more, we take care of the complexities so you can focus on what matters most. Whether it's supporting visionaries or maximizing returns for your LPs, our tech-driven and comprehensive solutions empower you to achieve your goals with confidence. Partner with ACE Alternatives to streamline your operations and elevate your fund success.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall.
It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.
This show is not investment advice, and the hosts of this episode may be invested in the funds and companies featured.
So today we have actually a repeat offender to the podcast. It's been a while. We've done almost 400 episodes. So sometimes I almost forget when the recordings were, which is the case. But I think it was probably in 22 or something like that. I don't know. But we have a repeat offender with us, Apostolos Apostolakis, founding partner of VentureFriends. To those that don't know, VentureFriends has roughly 170 million euros in AUM. They're now deploying out of Fund 3. I think Fund 4 is coming soon just because I'm looking at the timeline. To those that don't know, VentureFriends is focused on pre-seed and seed in Europe, UK, and Middle East. They have offices in London, Barcelona, Warsaw, and beautiful Athens, which is one of my favorite cities in Europe, as many may know. And they're focused on B2B and B2C software, and fintech being something they also care a lot about. Notable investments are Blueground, Huspy, Instashop, Carmoola, Flexcar, Embat, Harborlab, Spotawheel, AgroClub, and Barty. Apostolos, how are you?
I'm very well, and thank you for having me again, David.
Again, exactly. So today we have a weird, different episode. It's not the type of episode we normally do. And I want to start by saying kudos to you for kind of accepting the challenge of experimenting with us on the content, which is always like incredibly welcome by us. So to those listening in, we today are doing this kind of different approach where we're going to talk about a European unicorn. And guess why Apostolos is here? Because he invested in that company. So we're here to talk about Blueground. Apostolos, do you want to start off by just giving us kind of a quick rundown of what is Blueground for those that don't know?
So Blueground is a full stack operator in PropTech, meaning they offer apartments, fully furnished apartments for booking of 1 month plus, so for medium-term stay in 30 cities globally. So the difference is that they are actually renting those apartments. They're taking care of their aesthetic improvement. They're also taking care of adding furniture, and then they allow people to book them for 1 month up to 1 year.
Yeah, and let's go back memory lane here. When did you first meet the company?
So we met in 2015. It was one of the first companies we met with. During the time we were launching VentureFriends, actually, because VentureFriends was officially launched in 2016.
Yeah. Okay. And so help me here. So Blueground was
already going, actually. It was already going. That's an interesting story, and it's one of those stories that really shows you the passion of the founder and his willingness to get going even without getting venture capital funding, which is obviously a great start. Alex was already working at Samsung, and he had started Blueground with his own capital and some co-founders, some friends of his who were based in Athens. He was traveling between Korea and Athens, while on parallel had set up Blueground, has furnished some apartments in Athens and had started subletting them, and had already the proof that this was working. He has a couple of hundreds of apartments actually in Greece. And at some point he realized that this can be pretty huge. So I guess a common friend introduced us, a common acquaintance said, okay, why don't you have a chat? And that's when I I saw the deck and I visited them in their office at the time in the north of Athens, in a residential building,
Yeah.
and we had the first discussion.
Yeah, yeah. And so, for those that don't know, Blueground was considered, and I'm referring to public data, was considered a unicorn in March this year, 2024. Most recent valuation, according to public data, 1 billion. So it's been a ride.
It's been a ride, and certainly not a smooth one. But yeah, Blueground raised in this difficult year for the markets for funding, raised around at that valuation. So there is a 40 million round to get us to profitability. So yes, this valuation is pretty accurate.
So you said a common acquaintance introduced you. You guys met. Blueground had some activity already in Athens. You guys met in the north of Athens. Share some more details. How was that? Take us through that experience as if we were watching a documentary.
I mean, it's not often that you get very excited about a business and about the founder and everything. And on my side, it was really, I would dare to say, like love at first sight. So it was a founder who was very articulate, very thoughtful, had amazing passion, and the desire to build something huge and impactful, together with the business model that totally made sense. The founder had lived the problem himself. So he had been a consultant and working for a company based in Korea. He had to travel a lot and spend a couple of months in cities. And he didn't want to be staying at hotels all the time. He wanted, the coziness of a house, but it's very hard, as we can imagine, to find a place and rent it out for a few months. So that was the gap that was identified. And he acted on that aha moment, created the similar service in Athens, started renting out some places, and then offering them to the market for medium-term stay.
Yeah. So, personal story here to segue the next question. Last year, we were about to move to this house where I'm doing this recording now. This is the new house that we did, some remodulation. And we get to this house on the 22nd of December. My wife, super excited about first Christmas in the new house, right? And we walk in, and guess what? The constructions weren't ended. We still didn't have a bunch of very, very basic stuff. So here we are. We drove for 2 hours from our old house, which wasn't in Lisbon. We get here, the house isn't ready. 3 days to Christmas. What the hell do you do? Funny thing. So this was in December last year, right? I actually went on Airbnb and I found a really cozy and nice place where we actually ended up spending Christmas. Funnily enough, it was managed by Blueground. And I didn't know that at the time. And funny story, because when I looked at the list of European unicorns around April and I saw Blueground, I was like, oh, that's cool. That's awesome, right? But, funny story. But the question being, what you're describing to many would sound very similar to Airbnb. Explain to us the investor rationale here.
That's a very good point. And indeed, Airbnb is a channel for us. One could argue that it's also a competitor, because they're offering the same service. So they offer apartments for medium-term stay. The difference with Blueground is that we don't have this extra layer, somebody who's connecting the renter with the property manager. So Blueground decided to build a brand and also take care of a consistent experience across many cities all around the world. So in reality, what you get with Blueground is a consistent, ready to move in experience. You know what you're getting, and that's a difference. And building a global brand, that was from day one the aspiration that the founder had.
I guess he's happy now.
He's happy now. He's happy, yes, but it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's ignore, ignoring the Airbnb versus Blueground comparison, of course. Guide us through your thought process. So you met the founder, you were impressed by the founder, of course, but from there to executing the investment, what was that thought process like? What got you excited at the end of the day?
Investing at seed and pre-seed, it's mostly about the team. And in this case, it was we had a founder who had the passion, had the understanding, had really thought through this, and we had the data points of a couple of hundred apartments that were already being rented out in Athens, and the unit economics made sense. The demand was there. So obviously there are always question marks. Is this scalable? Can there be, what's the technology angle? Can this go to other markets? Will the need be the same in other markets? But for me, it was a very strong conviction that I developed early on that this would work. I could resonate with the need, and I could see this happening. So I guess it was an execution risk launching this in other cities.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I think many would ask, which is, what's the tech angle?
Yeah, and that's a valid question. It's not apparent from at the first glance, but there is a huge technology angle here, starting from asset selection. How do you use data to make the proper decision on which apartments to onboard, which apartments to offer? Then there is a lot of technology around the pricing, around the process of how to prepare an apartment to be ready to be offered to the consumers, to the B2B or the B2C buyer, renter. And finally, of course, the booking process. You have to create a website and a mobile experience. A website to begin with for booking, and then a mobile experience once the renter is already living in that apartment. So there are quite a few points in technology, and it's no accident that even now Blueground, at its maturity, is employing more than 80 people in technology, catering for all those.
Do you have an idea of how many properties they have? Do you have a number in mind?
They have 15,000 operated properties by us, and now we have also the partner network and the franchise model, which adds another 5,000 to 10,000 properties. But these are not managed by us; we are supporting.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I can say that as a user, right, unknowingly a user, but a user, the onboarding process was very smooth, and you have to sign a contract because we stayed for a month and a half or something. So midterm, we needed a contract. It was very quick, very easy. Within a couple of hours, it was sorted. So that's all tech enabled. Even when you don't see tech, that's when it's best, right? You don't see it and it's happening. And then actually we had some issues at the end. We had to leave earlier. There was a problem, and it was also a super smooth process actually. So that's also probably where the tech is playing a big role.
Amazing. Very happy to hear. I didn't know that, but that's great news, and I'm glad the experience was good.
Exactly. I have no shares, even though we have that disclaimer in the beginning of the episodes. I'm not doing this because I have to. It's a true story.
Thank you. These are the best.
So you mentioned many times that you're impressed by the founder, and that his vision resonated with you. And again, as you said, investing at early stage, it's a lot about the founder at the end of the day, right? So I do see that was a big factor in your decision making process. Two questions. Question one: is that still the case in the way VentureFriends operates? And second question connected to that is, it's been a while, and Blueground has played a very exciting journey. It's not done yet, of course, but it's been a while. It's getting there. Exciting. What are some learnings actually from this deal, from this investment, that you take with you as an investor today into other investments that you're doing?
Yeah, on the first question, certainly it's all about the founding team. We place a lot of importance on that. Actually, I would argue that sometimes we may compromise a bit on the business model if we're too excited about the founding team. So that still holds as a seed and pre-seed investor. Regarding learnings, there are many learnings, many interesting things that happened in this process. But certainly one thing that I can start with is it certainly raised the bar regarding our expectations about founders and what ideally we should be looking for. Alex sets the example. I mentioned about his mission, which was always the bar was always very high. He always wanted to build something very big. But what was really important is the clarity of thought, how easy the communication was, how it was very easy for him to discuss and share his view and about where the company could head. And I would add one thing that is not often mentioned, but I felt there was a very strong alignment, a very clear alignment in terms of values. Alex is a person with strong values, meritocracy, transparency, and honesty, and openness. This is very important. And once you get this relationship going from the beginning, it's very valuable, because typically things are not straightforward and there will be tough times. But once you have built a trusted relationship, once you trust the founder and vice versa, you trust the investor, it's very helpful in times of crisis. It kind of puts more pressure in a good way to the investor to be there and support and go out of his way, but also feel confident about the business he has invested in. And this is important because at the end of the day, we investors were going out and sell the business as well. We promote it, we discuss about it, and the more confident we are, this comes out. You know when you have a discussion with an investor, and you can see whether they're like fully on and really believe in the business, or they're just sharing an investment like they share all their investments. And this was very important with Blueground, and it has been with many of our companies, because there will be times of crisis, and you will have to, be supportive, and it's much easier.
On that alignment, right? You're going back to this founder-centric decision making, right? But on that, two very concrete questions. One, how has that alignment of values helped in the investor-founder relationship over this whole process? So from first ticket, we'll talk a bit more about it, but you also did the follow-on round in like all of those dynamics, investor-founder dynamics. But then same question, but different angle. How has it played out in terms of just plain company building? So you talked about transparency, talked a lot about values, accountability. So I'd love to hear your reflections on those two.
Yes, that's a very good point. Let me start from the second part, because this is not just about the investor and the founder relationship, right? Building a company, the investor plays a limited role. The most important role is how the founder motivates and aligns their team. So this value-based system is very helpful when the culture of the company is open and transparent, and people feel they can trust, they can believe in the founder and can trust them. And again, this is very important in times of crisis, when things are going well, everybody's happy and it's easy times. But when things are tough is when you really need to be able to be open, and it's not easy. Sometimes, as a founder, it's a lonely job, as we know. It's hard to be totally transparent, but still, there is a spectrum, and if you can be transparent and you can convey confidence in what you're aiming for, this is very important for retaining and motivating your team. And that was the case with Blueground.
Yeah, I can see that. So to those listening to us, we've kind of covered the inception story between the love affair between Apostolos and Alex. more than that, the business affair as well. And now we're gonna look at to the development of the company and so on. But before we do that, this is a new type of episode we're doing, where we're talking about specific companies and the journeys and the early backers of those companies, the early believers like Apostolos. If you have any feedback, recommendations, if there's stuff you love about the episode, stuff you don't really like that much, please give us feedback as comments on either EU.VC or on Spotify or whatever platform you use. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we can make more insightful episodes for you as well. Back to our conversation, Apostolos. So I want to ask about the biggest milestones. And I know you actually really took the time to think and kind of look back on the timings of stuff. So I'll hand it over to you. Take us through the journey of Blueground.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a milestone for every startup, starting from a home market. And we're talking about companies they have to go to a country by country kind of growth story. It's not a SaaS business where you can roll out globally. The first milestone is a successful international expansion. So for Blueground, when we gave them the seed round, when we led the seed round back in 2016, the promise was that we will launch in Istanbul and Dubai and prove that this is not a problem that only exists in Athens, but also in two more cities at least. One more, I would say, one very international city like Dubai, but also another large city like Istanbul. And indeed, this milestone was successfully achieved. Blueground launched in those two cities successfully.
Can I interrupt you? I'm
Yeah,
so
of course.
sorry, but like a company that's 2015, 16, right? Let's remember that. Company that's operating in Athens. Things seem to go well. Expanding into Istanbul and Dubai. Is that a common route? It feels so. I'm not from the region, right? I'm from the other side of Europe.
Yes.
But it feels to me like not so obvious. Can you explain?
It's a good point. So Istanbul, I would say, happened because of friends that we had, that Alex had from INSEAD and from his previous work, which made it a natural easy expansion with some trusted people. And Dubai is the epitome of a cosmopolitan city with many expats. So a city that should have had a very strong product market fit for the offering of Blueground. That was the idea. Another metropolitan city and one really global city. That's the idea. And so, of course, that would have been the first step, right? And it was once this was achieved, it's when we went out to raise a Series A, and that's when the first issues started to appear. This was a model that did not resonate with investors back then. Let's remind ourselves that 2017 region had not many investors active in Eastern, Southeastern Europe. The model was also not a clear one. So only a few conversations matured. And actually, after a last painful conversation where a lot of time was spent, and at that time, exactly because we were early on our journey with VentureFriends, I was also quite involved. And of course, because I'm passionate, I was always passionate about Blueground, so I attended some of those discussions. And I saw that it was hard for investors. They were taking a lot of time, asking a lot of questions, and eventually the offer that came by was a very low one. So that's when we had, the first dilemma: how do we deal with this? And that's when we decided to go, to double down and actually lead the Series A, even though we're a small 20 million euro fund.
So let's try to break that up into pieces, right? So first, big chunk of your fund.
Yes.
So that means you're probably on the upper limit of what your LPA allows you to do, if not more.
The maximum, yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure some LPs asked questions.
Yes.
And it's also it's a big ticket, yes, but it's also not the core stage of that fund, right? That was a seed focused fund, right? Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so I have a couple of questions, right? So what do you think allowed you to be able to pull that off, both in terms of having the conviction / the courage yourself to push for that deal, but also to actually go through with it, and the whole team understanding what it was about, the LPs understanding what it was about, not hindering not destroying any bridges or hindering trust, all of those soft topics, but they do play a big role. This is 20% of a fund, right?
Yeah, this fund had, of course, the LPs were family offices. So it's what enabled us. I wouldn't say allowed, because we were allowed to do it. But of course, we had the moral obligation, and we're always thinking, are we doing the right thing? So we always thought we're doing the right thing. Having said that, and in order to make it more palatable and explain our rationale, we actually brought Alex to present at our annual LP meeting, where people had the opportunity to meet him. And I can say that many of our LPs were also amazed by the caliber, by the vision, and actually co-invested in that round, came with us and validated our decision. So this is what helped us.
That helps. That helps.
Yes.
And then the second question I have around the series, early Series A, let's call it like that, was what do you remember, like, what were the reservations of other investors?
The reservations of other investors were around scalability. How quickly can this company grow? how can technology enable it? But I think scalability, because if we go to the other side of the Atlantic, we see a lot of VCs investing, in coffee shops and other things. But in Europe, it's, the mindset is a bit more I think we're a bit more close-minded, maybe risk-averse, especially at the time, and nobody could kind of discern that you had an amazing founder here who could make this model grow nicely. By the way, that was the time when we started seeing some players jumping out in the US as well. So I could say that this is one of the few cases where Blueground kind of opened the road. And then on parallel, we started seeing players like Sonder or Lyric or Zeus Living actually get well funded in the US by major investors, including Airbnb and other big funds.
How big was VentureFriends at the time?
It was 20 million.
And, sorry, the team.
Sorry, the team at the time we started, we were like four. Okay, at the beginning of the fund, we were 3 people.
Yeah.
A year after, we were 4. So it's not like it's a small team.
And how big are you today, team-wise?
So now we're 9.
9. Okay. Do you feel like as you grow as a company that it's harder to do bets like this? Because this for me from the outside, it looks like one of the team members, senior team member, was really excited about this company, understood the company well, was involved and hands-on enough to see, okay, why is this next round being really hard to raise? Does that affect my conviction? No, let's solve that problem. As you grow, these things are harder to do.
Yes, these things are harder to do. You're absolutely right. But on the other hand, the size of the fund allows us to take similar or even larger tickets, larger exposure in companies, and that exposure would still be like much smaller as a percentage of the fund. Yes, it was a large chunk of the fund, 20%, but it was a 4 million exposure. For the fund, it had to work for sure for that fund, and it needed this extra level of conviction. But then now we can take 5, 6, or 8 million, and we have taken this kind of exposure, and that would still be sub 10% of the size of the fund.
Yeah. So what you're actually saying is increasing fund size partially solves a big part of this tension.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's a cool soundbite to hear in a world where we all love micro VCs. Yes. It's not all good when you're small.
Yes, sometimes you're going to take the future in your hands, if possible, or affect the future of a company. Because I'm not saying you should always be contrarian, but sometimes maybe you see something that other people will take a few more rounds to see, and it's a pity if this company is doomed because you don't have the extra firepower to support.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on. So early Series A, 2017, VF steps up, leads the Series A, and invests 20% of its first fund. What next?
Yes, it was a bold step at the time. But, with this capital, and that's when we have a very interesting discussion, actually. This is very interesting. That shows how Alex was thinking, how it was forward-looking. Then the natural next step would have been, at least in our view, to go around Europe. There we have amazing metropolitan cities in Europe, like London, Paris, Madrid, so many places we could go. And then Alex goes out and say, you know what? No, I want us to go to the US. I've seen that some players already started popping out. I want us, and I believe we can be the global leader. But if we have this kind of aspiration, we need to go to the US now. And I'm willing to move to New York and set up Blueground there to make sure that it's going to be a success. And this is what happens, and this is what shows, sometimes you have the investors pushing in that direction. Sometimes, which is it's the founder who makes a decision. And this is what happened. And by the way, one thing, another learning that goes around efficiency, Blueground has been pretty efficient, especially for this kind of business that is a bit capital intensive. And also one of the other reasons investors were a bit reluctant was because you have to do some investment up front to furnish the apartment. So you do a capex around 10K per apartment, which also makes it less appealing, less scalable as a business model. Going back to the US part, so Alex moves to New York, sets up, rents the first apartments, and as expected, there is product market fit. There is a segment of the market that needs furnished apartments easily for 1 to 3 months duration. So we started having traction in the US, and then being optimistic, we said, okay, let's give it 9 months so that we're having good many data points, and let's go raise a round in the US. And then again, we're disillusioned because as we learned, it's not easy, despite we have been much more efficient compared to the other players that at the time had raised. But because they were already based in the US, they had this advantage of relationships with US funds. We're getting the benefit of the doubt. So again, we have to step up because we felt the urgency. We now have the support of some other investors and connections because, we had met Kevin Ryan at the time. There was Jabbar, this other fund from the Middle East we have been co-investors with in Instashop. So there were a few more people, but again, we have to lead. We have to give a term sheet. And then we decided to take the extra step and did something that is not very common, still not very common, which is do a crossover from our second fund. So it's 2018 now, the second fund has been raised, it's 50 million. So we decided to lead the Series A, like a proper Series A round, and do like a 6 million ticket, which again is already like a big chunk of the fund. But we have already seen Blueground execute in the US, and this is no easy feat. We have had the experience of companies launching in the US and not making it. It's not easy to make it to the US. There is the things you have to learn, you have to adapt, and Blueground had done it. So again, one can say it was a big risk to do a big ticket and do a crossover, so double down on the conviction, but we had more data points and even stronger belief in the team.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but from doing the early Series A in 2017, 20% of your first fund, and then 2018 doing the Series A, 12% of that fund, did you get a lot of LP questions?
We didn't get many because we had also asked specifically before launching the second fund, because we had this in mind, for a few exceptions, to be able to invest in the Series A of 2 or 3 outlier companies. So Instashop was one of them, and Blueground. We had those in mind. So we had already got clearance, as long as, of course, 50% of the money was put in by a new investor who would set the valuation. So it was, everything was done properly. So that's why we didn't get questions. And everybody could see the trajectory of a company. It's not common to experience a company going from, Greece and Turkey, Dubai, and then the US and be successful. So all the KPIs were looking good. So we actually got away with it, and the round was done, which gave us an extra year to prove even more data points, launch San Francisco and LA, and eventually we got a great investor from the US, Westcap, the founder of Lauren Stossi, ex-CFO of Blackstone and Airbnb, and Prime Ventures, a 50 million round, which was eventually a testament of it's not only us mostly believing.
Finally, someone else leads.
Yes.
That must have been
a relief.
Yeah, a relief in a way, right? Obviously.
Yes.
Someone is seeing what I've been seeing for a while.
And a validation, right? At some point, because people were asking, okay, you've done this 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Okay, when will this end?
Yeah, exactly. So what about COVID? COVID happened shortly after that.
That's the thing. So we said, okay, now we can step back and take an observer seat in a sense at things. But no, fate had different plans for us because COVID came, huge crisis for the industry. And this is again when leaders are revealed. And Alex really stepped up, did an amazing job, very tough job, which also allowed him to gain the confidence of the new investors. Many of the companies in our sector went under during that time, or kind of got crippled and eventually went under later, or never made it to become great companies. But nevertheless, we had to raise like a bridge round a year into COVID because you lose all your demand. even if you do cost cutting, which we did, even you renegotiate, we did all the hard things that one has to do, but still we needed some kind of cushion. And of course, as we all know, in difficult times, the cushion doesn't come at a cheap price. But we also had to step up and support a bit. So we invested a bit more. We helped the round, but Westcap, to their credit, was the one who led. But we also had to chip in and help bring in some LPs. So this happened, and then we flourished. Because post-Corona, if you remember, was a time when there was a lot of money printing, as we all know. Everything skyrocketed. The demand was there. People wanted to travel even more. So things were going very well. And this is where another learning comes to mind, which is that even very strong founders, and I've said so many great things about Alex, but at that point, you become a bit more complacent because everything is going your way. You have very high margins, unlimited demand. So maybe you're not paying as much attention to your cost structure. You're not as efficient as you could be. Having said that, we were always very efficient. So compared to everyone else, we have been very efficient, but we could have been more. I mean, that's a big lesson learned here, which we eventually had to learn a bit later.
So I'm going to do a quick wrap up of the core takeaways we've spoken so far. And then I'm going to ask you to probably talk about one or two of those in more detail. And so core takeaways aligned, and I'm reading because Apostolos shared awesome notes with me. So he made my life very easy. Key takeaway 1, aligned values and open communication are important to build trust and keep team and investors close. We spoke that quite a bit. Takeaway 2, mission-driven founder. Again, we spoke a lot about this, and as Apostolos said, he's spoken very highly of Alex. Key takeaway 3, early focus on the basics, profitability and unit economics. As we said, when you met the company, there was already a business. It wasn't only a pitch deck; it was a bit more. Key takeaway 4, crisis reveals leaders. We just talked about it, Corona, right? And to use your own words, the founder went in survival mode and delivered. Next takeaway, investor conviction. I don't think we need to talk more about it. VentureFriends invested 20% of 2 funds. It's a lot of money. 20% of 2 funds. Let me repeat that. And then the final takeaway, even great founders can lose sight. And so you just talked about this now, but I know you have a more recent crisis as well, which I'd love for you to comment on.
Yeah. So the first time when, we became a bit complacent, was after raising this 50 million round, and then everybody was pushing for growth. So then we became a bit more relaxed on our underwriting. We thought we were also in a race with the other players. So we hired people, and we maybe some problems that could have been solved with technology. We didn't rely on technology as much, but rather on people, throwing people at the problem. And then we became more efficient. There was a first level of driving efficiency. And then we had this, abrupt landing for all of us, as we know, the interest rate hikes, 2022, the absolute drying up of funding, for especially growth funding, which meant that there were no alternatives. It was very hard for Blueground to not become sustainable. And that's when really Alex realized that there was so much more to be done. I would borrow this term, he went into founder mode, as was recently discussed. He really went deep in every department and identified significant opportunities for more efficient operations. And that's why, we had like 10,000 apartments and we were 1,000 people. Now we're already 800 people with 15,000 apartments. And this shows a clear trajectory.
50% growth, 20% less staff.
Exactly. And this was enabled through the use of technology and through deep dives on various departments. That's why I say investors, of course, they should be there during the bad times, and we have been there, helping, being supportive, being practically providing capital or helping with connections, but also in the good times when the founding team feel very, optimistic and growth mode, then again, the investors, they're needed even at that time, just to remind that the founder that we should build on a solid foundation, and we should always strive to automate. I love this motto that one of our other founders is using all the time: always be automating what can be done more efficiently. And this is where maybe just because we had this history, maybe we were a bit less, pointing at that time. But this is a big learning. Investors need to be there both in the bad times and the good times.
Yeah. I like it also to ground people and help them kind of, be critical about everything around them. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a different question about a different topic. You wrote in your notes, and I'll quote you here, that beyond a certain revenue level / stage, and you mentioned after Series B, a company should always be able to get to profitability with limited capital. So you're kind of commenting on what you just said, right? High interest rates, tough funding environment, blah, blah. But, I can't help but feel that there's a hidden critique here to some stories / companies / investors. So I'd love to ask you to kind of expand on this concept and what it means to you as an investor, actually.
I think this has become more pronounced as a topic of discussion the last couple of years, just because funding was less available. And then people start to realize, okay, wait a minute. I mean, this company has raised, 100 or 200 million. They have reached a certain level of revenues, 200-300 million. Why can't they be profitable? And this is a valid question. And in the past, we never cared. We said, okay, we're just grabbing market share. But at some point, there is a certain scale beyond which a company, if they decide to, should be able to be profitable. And it's also a way to make the company feel independent of the whims of the markets. I think this is very relevant now these days, where it's not certain that you will be able to raise growth funding under any terms. And I think it's a useful thought. I mean, for me, it's a valid question. Once a company has reached a certain level of revenues, they have a critical mass, a scale, they should be able to turn into profitability. Or there must be a very good reason why they're not. And this is a point that has been the reason why also we had to make it happen.
I guess the counter argument would be someone quoting to you the Amazon example, right? Which took forever to become profitable.
That's a very good point. But the answer to this is that Amazon could easily respond that if we chose to, we could lower growth and become profitable. So it's a matter of decision. I'm not saying that it should happen, but it should be very clearly shown that the company will continue to burn. But if they choose to, they can just stop growing and become profitable.
So and that's a good nuance, right? In the way that what you're saying is not it should be profitable. What you're saying is it should be possible for the company to become profitable if they decide so, because there is, as you said, this level of revenues, this level of scale, that it is possible. So it's really a strategic option rather than a necessity.
Yeah. Exactly.
I like that a lot. Very cool. So to our listeners, as you've noticed, this is a different episode that we're doing. So any feedback is welcome. Is there ways we can improve? Should I be more forceful on asking Apostolos about the details of the term sheets and the details and the challenges that the company went through? Did I do a good job hosting this and asking the right questions? Please give us feedback in the comments, and we hope we can make these episodes even more insightful. So Apostolos, last section of our conversation today, which is the future, right? And so looking this post-unicorn era, right? What are you looking forward to? What are you excited about? What's next for Blueground?
Yeah, it's very interesting how when you enter a specific sector and you start becoming more knowledgeable and educated about it, you identify opportunities and which expand the market. We've seen it with many companies. Blueground is the same. It's a good example of that. Now Blueground has launched Partner Network. So in essence, Partner Network is a curated marketplace because Blueground has the know-how about what an apartment should be. So they can do a proper underwriting of the assets. They can also support on pricing, on distribution. So they have built this partner network, which is growing very fast. And that's the first product, the new product that they have launched. And the second is franchising. So Blueground is now growing organically within their cities where they're already active in, with the full stack operating model. But they're also giving the technology and the know-how to big partners. And they do the CapEx, and Blueground is providing all the support. And this is how we've done some great work in Japan with Mitsubishi, and now Blueground is in Tokyo, similarly in Riyadh, in Cairo, and there will be 10 more cities where we launch with local franchising partners. So these are the two different business models that are much more scalable and can, of course, greatly support growth, faster and more efficient growth.
Yeah. So now the question that you probably won't be able to answer and might get you in trouble if you do. Is VentureFriends selling? When is VentureFriends selling? How do you think about, generally speaking? So first part of the question is not connected to Blueground, just to be clear. How does VentureFriends and you think about, the liquidation of assets, generally speaking? And then specific to Blueground, anything you can share?
Yeah, no, it's a valid question. I think we should be open about those things. But VentureFriends, like every other fund, has like a 10+2 life. Fortunately, we are on year 9, so there are at least 3 years ahead of us. Yes, during that period, we will have to sell somehow. And the good news is specifically to Blueground that with this very strong 2025 that we expect to be profitable and growing nicely, the next couple of years should offer us the opportunity to exit and observe the trajectory of the company from the sidelines.
Have you, I don't know, so you might say, I prefer not to answer and we have to edit it out, but have you done any partial exits at all so far?
We haven't done any exits at all because until now, we wanted to be supportive and we didn't want to give any signal.
To the market. Yeah.
Unwanted signal because it couldn't also be accurate. But now...
Did you get any, especially, I'm going on a limb here, but especially with the unicorn status announcement, did you start getting questions from LPs around secondary selling? Because I feel like it's quite common for that to happen at this stage.
I think all of VC funds during those last couple of years were recipients of the anxiety of LPs about liquidity.
Yes.
And that has to do with the fact that, suddenly exits became scarce. So, yes, also this question happened around Blueground. When are we selling? When are we getting some liquidity? But as we all know, you cannot exactly time those things. It needs to be the right time, which is coming. So we had to address those concerns and do the best that is for our LPs.
Exciting. So for everyone listening in, stay tuned for what's next with Blueground. And if you happen to have the next big unicorn idea, maybe Apostolos will be interesting in backing you and working with you for the next 9, 10, maybe even 12 years. Apostolos, thank you for joining us. I enjoyed this episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, David.
Here's a few words from our beloved sponsor. Discover where operational expertise meets innovation. With end-to-end coverage across fund admin, tax, accounting, compliance, ESG, and more, we take care of the complexities so you can focus on what matters most. Whether it's supporting visionaries or maximizing returns for your LPs, our tech-driven and comprehensive solutions empower you to achieve your goals with confidence. Partner with ACE Alternatives to streamline your operations and elevate your fund success.
This was their finest hour.
Tear down this wall. It's more than just an alliance. This is a union of values.
Let's start acting.